Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for coming along here today. I hope my presentation isn't going to take too long and that you will find it interesting. The purpose of today's presentation is to discuss how we can improve internal communications within our company. Now let me begin by explaining that I'd like to talk about the business case for better communication. Secondly, I want to cover different styles and methods. And finally, I would like to finish off by talking about some of the basics we need to have in place to deliver good quality, consistent communications across the company. I'd be very happy to invite you to ask questions at the end of the session, and I'm sure there'll be plenty of time for us to discuss some of the points that have been raised. A good example of how important internal communications are is shown by some findings from research that we have recently undertaken. Good communications is a very key factor in staff motivation. If you look at this slide, you will see how important it is to get the basics in place. You need to identify your communication requirement, agree your objectives and success criteria, identify your target audiences, define the content of your message, and determine the style of delivery. A good illustration of the communication process is when all those basics fall into place naturally.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for finding the time to come and join me for this presentation this afternoon. My name is Tim Mason. I'm a retail consultant, and many of you will have seen me shadowing you in your jobs and looking through the accounts and so on in the company over the last week. I've invited you here today to have a look at my findings. First, I'd like to have a look at the performance of the company, the sales of the company over the last 3 years. Then I'd like to have a look at our market share in the women's wear market and look at our competitors. And thirdly, I'd like to suggest some improvements in our range of women's wear. At the end, I'd be happy to answer any of your questions. If you have a look at this first graph, you can see that our sales topped 50 million the year before last. Then last year, sales dropped to 40 million, with a slight recovery at the end of the financial year. However, this year, sales have continued to drop to an all-time low of 30 million. Now let's look at our market share. As you can see, we have 25% of the market share, 10% down on last year.